All right. So, as many of you already know, that James Gunn is working on Man of Tomorrow. That's his next film that he's going to be able to debut after Supergirl and after Clayface. So, Man of Tomorrow is called Man of Tomorrow. And supposedly, it is not a direct sequel to Superman, but it is a follow up movie where Superman has a major role, and it's the next installment to the Superman saga. However, it is not clear if Supergirl is going to be included in the Superman saga. So, again, we have more proof that shows that Superman was not a success, and yet Superman is still getting sidelined as far as Lex is concerned. Um, from what I've seen before, it seems like the comments that he's made before, it seems like Superman will have a major role, but again, Superman will be sidelined with Lex, which is why it's called Man of Tomorrow. Also, there's some speculation that shows that this was going to be the initial title that was going to be labeled for Man of Steel 2, if it had been sequelized, had been under Zack Snyder's direction. But for one thing, I just noticed the fact is that for one, this is also the release dates for 2027, and on top of that, it's again sidelining Superman, weakening him again, and now he has a major role in a movie where he plays co-lead, and it's really not about him. Even the title just pushes him just edges him out. So this is the guy that has been trusted with one of the most famous superheroes of all time, and Lex, his arch nemesis, who unalived the guy in front of him, is getting probably going to be getting top billing and going to be sidelined from this guy so they can take on the larger threat. Okay. For one, I will say this. I looked on X the other day. There is no excitement and hype around this movie. None at all. If anything, this release date, the very project of itself, is getting lower momentum, lower hype, you know, just surrounding the fact is that people were not pleased with Superman that came out this year, and they are not looking forward to this at all. So I don't see anybody sticking around for 2 years to figure out whether this movie's any way worth, if it's worth their time. They have already canceled this out. They're not looking forward to it. They're not building any hype around it. They pretty much, the emphasis is saving their money and just don't care. And I am definitely in unison with them. I have no anticipation for this film. I'm done with anything James Gunn has came out with. I'm not curious about it. I don't care what happens to it. I still have not seen Superman to this day. I'm pushing back. I saw F1, loved F1. I put that in front of it, loved it. And I do not regret pushing that in front as well as other movies before I get to Superman. And that's how I feel about Man of Tomorrow. There is nothing about this that I look forward to. There's nothing anticipation where I look forward to anything else he's coming out with. So that's how I feel about that. With that aside, understand something, that the release date is not only very quick, but the way he is introducing this is also confusing his own audience. The same people that is backing him, he's confusing the audience by changing the slate and green lights his own projects that don't have a finished script yet. So he decides what's going to take priority, which means he said, based on his own rule, he will not go through or green light a movie unless there's a finished script. He has basically fast forward this. And I think this also goes with the fact is that, you know, there's no strong foundation. There's nothing that he really wants to do unless it meets his approval. So he's just going off the whim of it. So nobody can really trust him in anything he says. So I think this also has to do with the fact is that people have said that, James Gunn's contract is up next year, and he's just trying to justify the financials because Peacemaker season 2 is not reaching households the way he wants it. He keeps trying to make Peacemaker relevant, which it's not. And the fact is, he keeps trying to, which he has also alluded that Peacemaker season 2 is the prequel to Man of Tomorrow. So again, we have to be more invested in Peacemaker than we need to in order to keep up with a movie that he'll basically just say, well, you don't need to look at Peacemaker. You can look at Man of Tomorrow. Either way, from the movie to the television show, neither one of them are relevant to be able to spike people's interest to actually care about what happens. So, I mean, at this point, this desperate need to try to make Peacemaker irrelevant just goes to show that he's just basically trying to build up momentum for Man of Tomorrow, which is not working because in general are not interested in this movie. You've already made Superman weak. You've already made it completely with no substance, and now people are not interested or invested in to see what you're going to go forward. And I'm one of those people. And to be honest with you, this is done. This is over with. Okay. It seems to be based on the images for Man of Tomorrow, like the one up here. It seems like this movie that Superman and his armor-wearing Lex Luthor will be joining forces to face a greater threat while keeping their rivalry. So, and rumors have shown that the main antagonist may be Brainiac, along with allies. Again, another crowded film with Hawkgirl, Supergirl, and Lobo. Okay, so again, we're getting another team-based movie to where he can afford, which is what I think his whole plan was, to make another team build-up movie because he lacks the ability to write a solo Superman film. Again, this is the head of DC Studios. He is writing and directing this crap that he's asking us to sit up here and to support and spend money on. And it's never dawned on him the fact is that he is not the right man for the job. And again, he is crowding the film with more stars because he cannot understand that he is not that guy. Okay? So we are having to deal with, again, Supergirl, Hawkgirl, and Lobo all in the same film. So this is just a build-up to continuously push Superman out of the way. Again, even with Supergirl, he's got Lobo in there. So he cannot do a solo project by itself unless it's a villainized or an obscure character, which is really where he really wants to be. Okay? And just considering the fact is that Superman is sidelined with his nemesis, and on top of that with Lex, who is basically indicated as the real Man of Tomorrow. Okay, so again, as I said before, Lex Luthor unlines a victim in front of him, and now he's an ally for some reason because people are just supposed to just accept him as a likely ally just based on the situation and circumstances within another team up movie. Because again, James Gunn cannot do a solo Superman film. This is what we have all been worried about. And I'll be very clear about something. This is worse than I imagined when I thought James Gunn was going to take over from before. We knew this was going to happen, but now things are getting worse. Okay? And when he made Superman, he made him to be weak. He admitted to that. So he wants to concentrate on the character films and oddities and monsters of the DCU. So I think the whole point of looking at this with showing Lex as being the Man of Tomorrow, and on top of that, sidelining the pushing Superman to a co-lead, this goes to show there's a bigger scheme here than most people, that I think a lot of people are catching on to. So I think his whole point is just to concentrate on the character villains, the oddities, and the monsters of the DCU. So that way, also with obscure characters, so that way it allows him to be able to blur the lines of morality. So that way the audience can sympathize with them, which is another excuse for him to keep building team-up movies. And on top of that, to overshadow their protagonists. So I think his intention is basically, that's why he said that the Batman films where pretty much every story's been told within Batman, which is completely nonsensical and it makes and completely absurd, considering the fact is that he really doesn't have a big investment with Batman, because I believe that the reason why he's going forward with the Robin with dynamic duos because he doesn't know how to write for Batman and he pushes him out. He's already referred to him as a maniac. So I think Gunn is just pretty much Gunn's Superman is just not enough to fight his enemies alone. So Gunn saw to that, to making sure that he wanted to make sure that the very fact is that Gunn's Superman is not built to fight his enemies alone because he doesn't know how to manage these characters properly and effectively. He is not the man for the job for it. He doesn't know how to introduce these characters alongside of Superman with being able to manage their powers and their strengths and their weaknesses with a good balance. So he's just basically just trying to push out Superman, uplift the villains, because the truth is that's where he really wants to be. When he was initially brought on to do the job, he already admitted the fact is that the Suicide Squad was were the characters that he mostly identified with. Now you're seeing what it's like when you put a person like him in charge of Superman, right? So that's why we're getting this mediocre, weakened Superman, because it fits his mediocrity, and it fits his inadequacies of not being able to properly manage these characters. So again, there is no hype around this movie at all. the grift is pretty much in full sight for to lure the audience in to make this to make his cheap, uninteresting films and television shows to try to make them relevant. Because I think I'm gonna predict this at some point. He's probably gonna figure out a way to put Peacemaker in with Man of Tomorrow. I'm just gonna go with that optic because I believe that's what he's been doing. He keeps trying to interweave Creature Commandos and Peacemaker to make them relevant to, oh, you have to look at this as a prequel or a sequel to the movies, which is doesn't make any sense. And I think people are pretty much checked out for the in the long run. But that's what I wanted to give as an update. And again, I'm going to be checking out this circus full circle. Keeping on top of the updates, and I'll let you know what's going to happen next. All right, that's all I got so far. Peace.